The Galactic Naval Academy's main hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of cadets from dozens of species gathered for their final examination. The massive crystalline walls of the station reflected the light from 3 suns, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floors where future officers of the Galactic Federation stood in neat formations. Among the towering Zephyrians with their 4 arms and the graceful Etherians who seemed to float rather than walk, one figure stood out for all the wrong reasons. Cadet Sarah Chun, barely reaching the shoulder height of most aliens around her, adjusted her ill-fitting uniform for the 100th time that morning. The human section of the academy had always been the smallest, and she was the only human in her graduating class. "Look at the little pink thing," whispered Cadet Vextar, his reptilian features twisted in amusement. The draconian scales shimmered with superiority as his friends gathered around him. "I heard humans can't even survive in vacuum for more than a few minutes. How did she even make it this far?" Zara Lynn, an elegant Etherian with skin that glowed softly blue, drifted closer to the group. "My father says humans are a curiosity species. They have no natural weapons, no armor plating, no telepathic abilities. They're basically walking meat sacks that somehow stumbled into space travel." The laughter that followed was cruel and sharp, echoing off the academy walls. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her jaw clenched tight. She had heard it all before during her 3 years at the academy. The humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Federation, barely 2 centuries since first contact, and most aliens still saw them as primitive upstarts who had gotten lucky with their technology. Commander Tishwa, a massive insectoid being with compound eyes that could see in 12 different spectrums, stepped onto the central platform. His chittering voice filled the hall through universal translators. "Cadets, today you face the Crucible of Stars, the final test that will determine whether you are worthy to serve as officers in the Galactic Fleet. You will be divided into teams and face scenarios that test every aspect of your training." Sarah's stomach dropped as the team assignments appeared on the holographic displays around the hall. She had been placed with Vextar, Zara Lynn, and 2 other cadets who had made her life miserable throughout her time at the academy. It was either cosmic irony or deliberate cruelty. "Oh, perfect," Vextar hissed, his forked tongue flicking out in disgust. "We get stuck with a human deadweight. There goes our chance at graduating with honors." The simulation chamber they were assigned to was a marvel of technology, capable of creating completely realistic scenarios using hard light constructs and environmental manipulation. As they entered, the sterile walls faded away, replaced by the bridge of a Federation cruiser. Warning lights flashed red, and the artificial intelligence running the simulation began their scenario. "You are the senior staff aboard the Federation vessel Starwind," the AI announced. "A distress signal has been received from a civilian transport under attack by unknown raiders in the Nexus asteroid field. Time to intercept, 47 minutes. The transport shields are failing." Sarah immediately moved to the tactical station, her hands flying over the controls as she began analyzing the situation. The others took their positions with varying degrees of enthusiasm, clearly already writing off their chances of success. "Typical human reaction," sneered Korthke, a brutish Ogarian whose people were known for their strength and short tempers. "Rush to the weapons. No strategy, no thought, just violence." But Sarah wasn't looking at weapons. Her human eyes evolved to see patterns and details that many other species missed, were studying the asteroid field's layout on the tactical display. While her teammates argued about the best approach to reach the transport, she was seeing something else entirely. "The raider positions," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "What about the meat sack?" Vextar snuppet. "They're random positions around the transport. Standard pirate tactics." Sarah's fingers moved across her console, overlaying historical data about the Nexus field with the current raider positions. Her human brain, wired for pattern recognition in ways that had helped her species survive on a dangerous homeworld, was processing information that her teammates weren't even considering. "They're not random," she said, louder this time. "Look at this." She projected her analysis onto the main screen. The Raider ships, when viewed with the asteroid movements over the past 6 hours, formed a perfect intercept pattern. Not for the transport they were supposedly attacking, but for any Federation vessel that would come to its rescue. "It's a trap," Sarah continued, her voice growing more confident despite the dismissive looks from her teammates. "The transport isn't really under attack." The Raiders knew exactly when a Federation training vessel would be in this sector. They're using the transport as bait to ambush us. Zara Lynn's glowing form flickered with annoyance. Humans and their paranoid theories. The scenario clearly states the transport is under attack. "We don't have time for your conspiracy nonsense. Besides," added Korth, "even if it were a trap, we can handle some raiders. My people have been winning battles since before humans crawled out of their caves." Sarah stared at the display, her human intuition screaming that something was wrong. In the asteroid field, metal signatures that should have been debris were too uniform, too perfectly placed. Her species had evolved as persistent hunters, able to track prey across vast distances and see details that meant the difference between a successful hunt and starvation. "The debris field," she muttered, zooming in on several asteroid-sized objects. "These aren't asteroids." Before anyone could stop her, she activated a deep scan on one of the objects. The results made her blood run cold. Hidden among the real asteroids were 23 camouflaged ships, all running silent and waiting for them to enter the field. "It's not just a trap for us," she announced, her voice cutting through her teammates' arguments. "It's a trap for the entire Federation training fleet. Every team doing the simulation is being fed the same scenario. They're going to ambush the entire academy." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of warning alarms as the simulation's timer continued counting down. Sarah's teammates stared at her analysis, their expressions shifting from mockery to concern to outright fear. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was something much bigger, and the small human cadet had just uncovered a conspiracy that could change everything. The bridge simulation fell silent, except for the steady beeping of the countdown timer. 26 minutes until intercept. Sarah's teammates stared at the tactical display where she had highlighted the hidden fleet, their earlier mockery replaced by stunned disbelief. "This has to be a mistake," Zara Lynn whispered, her ethereal form flickering between blue and purple with anxiety. "The Academy would never put us in real danger. These are just training simulations." Sarah's fingers continued working across the tactical console, her human mind processing patterns and possibilities faster than she had ever pushed it before. "Check the communication logs," she said urgently. "Look at the timing of when each team received their scenario assignments." Vexstar's clawed hands moved reluctantly to the communication station. His reptilian features grew pale as he scrolled through the data. By the 7 moons, every team received their assignment at exactly 17-minute intervals. And they're all being directed to the same general area of the Nexus field from different approach vectors. "A perfect kill box," Korthike rumbled, his brutish features showing intelligence for the first time since Sarah had known him. "My people use similar tactics when hunting void whales. Drive the prey from multiple directions into a single killing ground." Sarah was already pulling up the Academy's external communication records, her clearance as a cadet giving her access to basic logs. What she found made her stomach turn. "Look at this. 3 days ago, someone accessed the Academy's training schedule database. The access was authorized, but the timing was just after the final exam scenarios were locked in." She highlighted the relevant entries on the main display. Someone with inside knowledge knew exactly when and where every training ship would be during the final examination. They've had 3 days to position their forces and prepare their ambush. "But who would do such a thing?" Zara Lynn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Academy is neutral territory. Attacking it would mean war with the entire Federation. Unless," Sarah said slowly, pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place in her mind, "someone wants to start a war. Think about it. What happens if the entire next generation of Federation officers is wiped out in a single attack? What happens if it looks like the Academy's security failed catastrophically. The implications hung heavy in the artificially recycled air of the simulation chamber. Sarah continued her analysis, her human pattern recognition abilities working overtime as she connected dots that her alien teammates couldn't see. "The raiders aren't random pirates," she announced, pulling up ship configuration data. "These are modified Federation vessels. Look at the hull signatures. They're using our own technology against us." Vextar's forked tongue flicked out in agitation. "Impossible. Federation technology has quantum locks. It can't be used by unauthorized species. It can if someone with the right clearance provided the unlock codes," Sarah replied grimly. "Someone high up in the Federation hierarchy. Someone who has access to training schedules, ship modifications, and quantum security protocols." The countdown timer showed 18 minutes remaining. In the distance, other simulation chambers continued their scenarios, unaware that they were flying toward their doom. Sarah made a decision that would have been unthinkable just an hour ago. "We have to warn the other teams," she said, moving toward the communication console. "Wait." Korthake's massive hand slammed down on the console, preventing her from accessing it. "You're talking about breaking simulation protocols. That's an automatic failure. We'll be expelled from the Academy. And if we don't warn them, they'll all be killed." Sarah shot back, her small frame radiating a fury that made the larger alien step back in surprise. "This isn't about graduation anymore. This is about saving lives." "But we don't know for certain," Zara Lynn protested. "What if you're wrong? What if this is just an elaborate test scenario designed to see how we handle impossible odds?" Sarah pulled up one final piece of data that silenced all objections. The energy signatures from those hidden ships. They're running live weapons systems, not simulation arrays. Hard-light constructs don't generate quantum resonance patterns. Those ships out there are real, and they're armed with real weapons. The truth of her words settled over the team like a death shroud. In 16 minutes, every other cadet team would fly straight into a massacre that would cripple the Federation's next generation of leadership. "Even if we warn them," Vextar said reluctantly, "they won't believe us." Would you believe a first-year cadet claiming the entire examination is a trap? Sarah was already formulating a plan, her human creativity and adaptability kicking into high gear. "We don't need them to believe us. We just need them to delay long enough to see the truth for themselves." Her fingers flew across multiple consoles simultaneously, accessing systems that technically required higher clearance. Her human intuition for technology, born from a species that had reverse-engineered alien tech to join the galactic community, allowed her to find workarounds that the Academy's programmers hadn't anticipated. "I'm sending each team modified sensor data," she explained as she worked. "Nothing that breaks simulation protocols directly, but information that will make them want to scan those asteroids more carefully. Anomalous mineral readings that suggest valuable resources, microgravity fluctuations that could indicate hidden mass." "Clever," admitted Korthke grudgingly. "Give them a reason to investigate without telling them what they'll find." "But what about us?" Zara Lynn asked. "We still need to maintain our simulation. If whoever is behind this is monitoring the scenarios, they'll notice if our team suddenly stops responding normally." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. They needed to continue their assigned scenario while simultaneously working to save the other teams. But more than that, they needed to gather evidence of the conspiracy and find a way to alert Academy Command. "We proceed with the rescue mission," she decided. "But we modify our approach. Instead of flying directly into the trap, we use the asteroid field's natural cover to get close enough to gather detailed scans of those hidden ships. If I'm right about this being an inside job, we need proof." 14 minutes until intercept. Sarah began plotting a course that would take them through the most dangerous part of the asteroid field, a route that no sane pilot would attempt under normal circumstances. But humans weren't known for their sanity. They were known for their stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds. "You realize," Vextar said as he watched her navigation calculations, "that even if we survive this and expose the conspiracy, no one will believe it was the human cadet who figured it all out." Sarah's hands never paused in their work as she replied, I don't care about credit. I care about making sure my classmates live to see graduation. And in that moment, something shifted in how her teammates looked at her. The dismissive mockery was gone, replaced by something that might have been the beginning of respect. The simulation's starship shuddered as Sarah guided it through the treacherous maze of the Nexus asteroid field. Her human reflexes, evolved from millions of years of avoiding predators and navigating dangerous terrain, served her well as she threaded the ship between spinning rocks the size of buildings. Impossible, Vextar hissed from a navigation station. No pilot should be able to navigate this route. The gravitational variations alone should tear us apart. But Sarah's hands moved across the controls with an almost supernatural grace. Her human brain, capable of processing multiple variables simultaneously while maintaining spatial awareness, calculated trajectories that the ship's computer labeled as having less than a 3% success probability. Humans evolved on a death world, she explained calmly as she rolled the ship inverted to avoid a massive asteroid cluster. Earth has more ways to kill you than most species encounter in their entire galactic exploration. We learn to adapt or we die. Behind them, her modified sensor data had begun reaching the other cadet teams. Sarah monitored the communication channels carefully, listening as confused voices reported strange readings in the asteroid field. Several teams had already begun deviating from their assigned routes to investigate the anomalies she had fabricated. Team 7 is requesting permission to scan Sector 447, Zara Lynn reported from the communication station. Team 12 has detected unusual quantum signatures in Sector 452. Good, Sarah muttered, executing a maneuver that brought their ship within 1,000 kilometers of one of the hidden raider vessels. Computer, begin deep spectrum analysis of object bearing 27 Mark IV. The scanning beam lanced out from their ship, invisible to most sensors but detectable to anyone who knew what to look for. Sarah held her breath as the data began flowing back to her console. What she saw confirmed her worst fears and added new layers of complexity to the conspiracy. The hidden ships, she announced grimly, they're not just modified Federation vessels. They're ships that were reported destroyed or missing over the past 2 years. The cruiser Starfall, lost in the Vega incident. The destroyer Nightwind, supposedly destroyed by pirates near the rim. Kortheka's massive frame tensed with anger. My brother served on the Nightwind. He died when that ship was destroyed. No, Sarah said softly, her scans revealing life support signatures aboard the supposedly destroyed vessel. He didn't die. None of them did. They're still alive aboard these ships. The implications were staggering. Someone with the highest levels of Federation clearance had been systematically faking ship destructions and conscripting their crews for this conspiracy. Federation officers, bound by oaths of loyalty and service, were being forced to participate in what could only be described as treason on a galactic scale. Why? Zara Lynn whispered, her ethereal form flickering with distress. Why would someone do this to their own people? Sarah continued her scans, her human intuition guiding her to look for patterns that others might miss. The answer came from an unexpected source, the ship's maintenance records. Every vessel in the hidden fleet had been scheduled for decommissioning within the next 6 months. Ships that were considered outdated or too expensive to maintain. It's not about starting a war, she realized aloud. It's about justifying a massive military buildup. Think about it. The entire next generation of Federation officers gets wiped out in a surprise attack using our own destroyed ships. The government responds by commissioning hundreds of new vessels and promoting whoever's left to fill the leadership vacuum. A power grab, Vextar said, understanding dawning in his reptilian features. Eliminate the competition and position yourself as the solution to the crisis you created. 7 minutes until the other teams would enter the kill zone. Sarah had gathered enough evidence to expose the conspiracy, but now they faced a new problem. How could 5 cadets in a simulation vessel stop a fleet of real warships crewed by Federation officers? We can't fight them, Kortheka stated the obvious. This simulation ship has training weapons at best. We'd be vaporized in seconds. But Sarah was studying the tactical situation with her uniquely human perspective. Where her teammates saw impossible odds, she saw opportunities. Her species hadn't conquered Earth by being the strongest or fastest predators. They had done it by being the most adaptable and creative. "We don't need to fight them," she said, her fingers already working on a new plan. "We need to make them fight each other." She began accessing the quantum communication protocols that linked the hidden ships, using her unauthorized access techniques to slip past their security systems. Her human brain, evolved to see social patterns and hierarchies, had noticed something in the crew assignments that others had missed. "Look at the command structure of these ships," she said, projecting the data onto the main screen. "Most of the crews are loyal Federation officers who think they're dead. But the command staff on each ship has been replaced with conspirators. The Real crews don't know they're part of a trap." "So?" Zara Lynn asked, still not understanding. "So we tell them the truth," Sarah replied with a grin that would have looked perfectly at home on a primitive human warrior. "We broadcast evidence of the conspiracy to every ship in the fleet simultaneously. Let the Real Federation crews deal with the traitors in their midst." It was a desperate plan with a dozen ways to fail catastrophically. But as Sarah prepared the transmission, her teammates found themselves believing it might actually work. There was something about the small human cadet's confidence that was infectious, a stubborn refusal to accept defeat that seemed to defy logic. "Even if it works," Vextar pointed out, "we'll still be in the middle of a fleet battle with nowhere to run." Sarah's smile widened, showing teeth that her alien classmates suddenly realized looked remarkably predatory. "Who said anything about running? We're going to capture the command ship and end this conspiracy once and for all. 5 minutes until intercept. Time to find out if human audacity was as powerful as human pattern recognition." The moment Sarah initiated the transmission, chaos erupted across the hidden fleet. Her carefully compiled evidence broadcast simultaneously to every ship in the conspiracy, reaching the loyal Federation crews who had believed they were dead for months or even years. "Transmission complete," she announced, watching as confused voices began flooding the communication channels. "Now we wait for the fireworks." They didn't have to wait long. Aboard the captured ships, Federation officers who had been kept in the dark about their true situation suddenly learned they were part of a conspiracy to massacre their own Academy's cadets. The reaction was immediate and violent. "Mutiny on the Starfall," Vextar reported, monitoring the fleet communications. "The crew is attempting to retake the bridge from the conspiracy forces." "Same thing happening on at least 6 other ships," added Zara Lynn, her ethereal form brightening with excitement. "Your plan is working." But Sarah's attention was focused on the largest vessel in the hidden fleet, a battlecruiser that her scans had identified as the command ship. Unlike the others, there were no sounds of internal conflict coming from that vessel. Either its crew was completely compromised, or the conspirators had taken more drastic steps to ensure loyalty. "That one's the key," she said, pointing to the command ship. "If we can take control of it, we can coordinate the loyal crews and shut down this entire operation." "With what?" Korth AK demanded. "We're in a training simulation with imaginary weapons." Sarah's grin turned predatory as she began accessing systems that technically shouldn't have existed in a simulation environment. "Not quite imaginary. The Academy uses hybrid simulation chambers that can interface with real ships for advanced training scenarios. If I can convince the chamber that we're supposed to dock with that command ship." Her fingers flew across the control panels, exploiting programming loopholes and emergency protocols that the Academy's designers had never intended to be used this way. Her human talent for seeing connections and possibilities that others missed allowed her to turn the simulation chamber into something far more dangerous than its creators had ever imagined. "There," she announced as the ship's systems began reconfiguring themselves. "We now have limited real-world capability. Enough to dock with that command ship and deploy a boarding party. A boarding party of 5 cadets against a battlecruiser full of conspirators," Vextar pointed out with typical reptilian pessimism. "Brilliant plan." But Sarah was already suiting up in emergency armor, her movements quick and efficient. Not 5 cadets, 1 human, and 4 very clever aliens who were about to learn why my species conquered a death world. As they approached the command ship through the chaos of the ongoing fleet battle around them, Sarah outlined her plan. It was insane, desperate, and had approximately 1,000 ways to fail catastrophically. It was also the most human plan any of her teammates had ever heard. Humans don't just adapt to survive, she explained as she prepared to hack the battlecruiser's docking systems. We adapt to thrive. Earth taught us that every disadvantage can become an advantage if you're creative enough. The docking process should have been impossible. The command ship's defenses were military-grade, designed to repel boarding attempts by trained soldiers with proper equipment. But Sarah wasn't approaching it like a soldier. She was approaching it like a human who had spent her entire life finding ways around limitations that should have been absolute. "Got it," she announced as the airlock finally cycled open. "Remember, we're not here to fight everyone. We're here to reach the command center and broadcast surrender orders to the entire conspiracy fleet." They moved through the battlecruiser's corridors like shadows, avoiding patrols and security systems through a combination of Sarah's intuitive understanding of ship layouts and her teammates' specialized abilities. The human cadet who had been mocked for her lack of natural weapons or armor was leading them through enemy territory with the confidence of a born predator. "How do you know where you're going?" Zara Lynn whispered as Sarah led them through what appeared to be a maintenance shaft that wasn't on any schematic. "Human ships are designed by humans," Sarah replied softly. "Even when we adapt alien technology, we still think like humans. Every ship has the same basic logic to its layout once you understand how human minds work." They encountered their first real opposition near the command center. 3 heavily armed conspirators blocked their path, their weapons trained on the approaching cadets. By all logic, the encounter should have ended with 5 dead Academy students. Instead, Sarah did something that no military manual in the galaxy would have recommended. She walked directly toward the armed enemies while speaking in a calm, conversational tone. "You know this is over, right?" she said, seemingly oblivious to the weapons pointed at her. "Your fleet is tearing itself apart. The Academy knows about the conspiracy, and Federation reinforcements are probably already on their way." "Stop right there, human," the lead conspirator snarled. "One more step and we open fire." Sarah took another step forward. "Go ahead. Fire on an unarmed cadet in full view of security cameras. That'll really help your cause when this goes to trial." The human ability to project confidence in the face of overwhelming odds, to make the impossible seem inevitable through sheer force of will, had an effect that Sarah had been counting on. The conspirators hesitated, their certainty shaken by her complete lack of fear. In that moment of hesitation, her teammates struck. Vextar's reptilian reflexes allowed him to disarm one guard before the man could react. Kortheka's massive strength overwhelmed another. Zara Lynn's ethereal abilities confused the third long enough for Sarah to reach him and apply a nerve strike that her human anatomy classes had taught her would work on most humanoid species. "Command center is just ahead," Sarah announced, stepping over the unconscious guards as if she did this sort of thing every day. "Time to end this conspiracy and save our classmates." But as they approached the final door, Sarah's human instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The command center was too quiet, too easy to reach. Someone had been expecting them. The command center doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a scene that made Sarah's blood run cold. Admiral Korthek, one of the most decorated officers in Federation history and the Academy's own commandant, stood at the central command console with a smile that held no warmth. "Cadet Chun," the Admiral said, his 4 arms manipulating controls with practiced efficiency. "I must admit, I'm impressed. When we designed this scenario, we never expected a first-year human to unravel our entire operation." Sarah's teammates froze in shock, but she kept moving forward, her human mind already processing this new information and adapting to the changed situation. "You're not going to stop the massacre," she said. It wasn't a question. "Stop it." Korthak's laugh was like grinding metal. "Child, I designed it. The Federation has grown weak and complacent. It needs strong leadership, and strong leaders require crises to justify their ascension to power. By murdering hundreds of cadets, Vextar snarled, his reptilian features twisted with betrayal. By sacrificing a few to save millions, the Admiral corrected. The Federation faces threats that require decisive action. Democracy and committee decisions are luxuries we can no longer afford. Sarah continued her advance, seeming almost casual despite the dire circumstances. Her human ability to remain calm under pressure was something that had evolved from generations of persistence hunting, where showing fear or hesitation could mean death. "There's just one problem with your plan," she said conversationally. "And what might that be?" "You assumed that humans would react predictably." Sarah's hands moved to her equipment belt with deceptive casualness. "But we're not a predictable species. We're the ones who looked at a planet full of things trying to kill us and decided to stay anyway." The Admiral's expression shifted from amusement to concern as he began to realize that the small human cadet wasn't acting like someone who had just discovered an impossible situation. She was acting like someone who had already figured out how to win. "Computer," Sarah called out loudly, "initiate emergency protocol 77 Alpha. Authorization Chun Sierra 44. "I'm sorry," Korthak said with renewed confidence, "but you don't have the authorization to access emergency protocols on this vessel." "You're right," Sarah agreed with a smile that would have looked perfectly at home on an ancient human warrior. "I don't have authorization on this vessel, but I do have authorization on the simulation chamber that this vessel is currently docked with." The Admiral's four eyes widened in horrified understanding just as the ship's systems began responding to commands from an external source. Sarah had never disconnected from the simulation chamber when they boarded the real ship. She had maintained the link, turning the training facility into an extension of her own capabilities. "Emergency lockdown initiated," the computer announced in the calm voice reserved for catastrophic situations. "All weapons systems offline. Life support maintained. Communications array redirected to Academy command frequency." "Impossible," Korthak breathed, frantically trying to regain control of his ship's systems. "Difficult," Sarah corrected. "But humans specialize in making the impossible look easy. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars." The communication array crackled to life, broadcasting on every frequency used by the Federation fleet. Sarah's voice, amplified through the command ship systems, reached every vessel in local space. "This is Cadet Sarah Chun of the Galactic Naval Academy," she announced. "Admiral Korthak and unknown conspirators have orchestrated a false flag operation intended to massacre Federation cadets and justify a military coup. All loyal Federation personnel are ordered to stand down and await the arrival of Fleet Command." The response was immediate. Across the hidden fleet, the shipboard mutinies that Sarah had initiated began succeeding as loyal crews realized the full scope of the conspiracy. The Admiral's carefully planned massacre was crumbling around him. "You don't understand," Korthak said desperately. "The Federation needs this. We're facing threats that require. The Federation needs leaders who trust in its people, not ones who murder children to grab power," Sarah interrupted. Her small frame somehow seemed to fill the command center as she spoke. "Humans have a saying, those who would sacrifice essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither." We learned that lesson the hard way. Through the command center's viewports, they could see Federation reinforcement ships dropping out of hyperspace. Real Federation ships with real weapons and crews who hadn't been part of any conspiracy. The Admiral's coup attempt had lasted less than an hour before being completely dismantled by a first-year cadet and her teammates. "Ow!" Korthak asked, slumping in defeat. "How did you see through a plan that took years to develop?" Sarah's answer came not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who truly understood her own capabilities. "Because you made the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You assume that because we don't have natural armor or claws or telepathy, we must be weak." She gestured toward her teammates, who were staring at her with expressions of awe and newfound respect. But humans don't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survive by being the most adaptable, the most creative, and the most stubborn species in the galaxy. We see patterns others miss. We make connections others don't understand, and we never, ever give up when lives are at stake. As Federation security forces began boarding the command ship, Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. Commander Futuristic, the Academy's senior instructor, had arrived with a reinforcement fleet. Cadet Chun, the massive insectoid, said, his compound eyes reflecting something that might have been pride. On behalf of the Galactic Federation, I must thank you and your team for preventing what could have been the greatest disaster in our history. Sarah looked around at her teammates, aliens who just hours earlier had mocked her as inferior and worthless. Now they stood straighter when she looked at them, their expressions showing a respect that had been hard-earned. "Just doing my duty, sir," she replied, "though I think my classmates might need some time to process everything that's happened." "Indeed," the commander agreed, "though I suspect the galaxy will be hearing about the human cadet who single-handedly prevented a military coup for many years to come." As they were escorted from the command ship, Vextar spoke for the first time since the Admiral's capture. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." "We all do." "No apology needed," Sarah replied, though her smile suggested she appreciated the gesture. "You learned something important today about underestimating humans. Just remember it when you're out there serving on real ships with real human crew members." Zara Lynn's ethereal form flickered with curiosity. "What do you think will happen to us now?" "Technically, we broke about a dozen Academy regulations during all of this." Sarah's laughter was warm and genuinely amused. "I think," she said, "we're probably going to be the first cadet team in Academy history to receive both a commendation for heroism and a reprimand for unauthorized system access on the same day." And as they walked back toward the Academy proper, past crowds of cadets and instructors who would spend years discussing the day that a human first year had saved the entire Federation, Sarah Chin realized that she had accomplished something more important than just preventing a massacre. She had proven that humans belonged among the stars, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. The galaxy was a big, dangerous place that needed every advantage it could get. And sometimes the greatest advantage came from the species that everyone underestimated. The species that looked at impossible odds and decided to try anyway. The species that never gave up, never backed down, and never stopped believing that tomorrow could be better than today. The species called human.